Welcome to Nothing But the Truth. I'm your host, Trudy Stern. Each week on this program, we discuss the major challenges facing America, Israel, and the Western world. This week, we're focusing on something happening right here at home. In just a few weeks, New Yorkers will head to the polls in primary elections that may determine the future direction of our city and our state for years to come. Most people don't pay attention to state assembly races or state senate races or city council races. They should, though, because these offices shape the policies that affect our daily lives: public safety, education, housing, taxes, economic opportunity, and support for Israel and the Jewish community. But they're also something more. New York has long been a bellwether for the nation. The political ideas that take root here often find their way into other states and eventually onto the national stage. And that is why this moment is so important. We are at a precipice. The debates taking place in these races are not small disagreements over policy details. They are fundamental questions about the kind of city, state, and country we want to be. Questions about public safety, about economic opportunity, about education, about support for Israel and America's role in the world. Questions about the very values that underpin our democratic society. The decisions voters make in these primaries will have consequences that extend far beyond the districts where these races are being fought. Today's city council member can become tomorrow's state assembly member. Today's state assembly member can become tomorrow's member of Congress. And that is why these races cannot be dismissed as merely local politics. Ronald Reagan famously said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same." Whether you agree with Reagan's politics or not, his point was timeless. Democracy is not self-sustaining. Freedom is not automatic. The values and institutions that we cherish endure only when citizens are informed, engaged, and willing to participate in the democratic process. And that begins with knowledge. Before we can make good decisions, we need to know who is running, what they believe, and what policies they hope to implement. Knowledge is the key, because voters cannot protect what they don't understand. My guest today is Rachel Storch, Executive Director of Nissan, the New York Solidarity Action Network. Nissan is one of the few organizations focused on educating New Yorkers about state and local races and helping voters understand the candidates and issues that will shape the future of our state. So, Rachel Storch, welcome to Nothing But the Truth.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on the show, and thank you for that incredibly articulate and I found poignant introduction. I believe freedom is worth fighting for and agree that it does need to be protected, and especially in this moment where so many of the fundamental principles that this country is based on are being called into question, it's more important than ever that we pay attention and participate in the civic process.
So, let's start right out with what is Nissan? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, absolutely. So Nissan, which stands for the New York Solidarity Network, is a membership organization that helps Jewish New Yorkers and any allies understand what's happening in state and local politics, who aligns with our values, and how we can actually make an impact together. It grew out of a very simple problem, which is that many deeply concerned, highly engaged people in our community were asking, who should I support? What really matters in this race? How do I show up in a way that isn't just symbolic? And we saw that while there was incredible organizing strength around federal issues, yet at the city and state level, where decisions about safety, schools, quality of life, the climate around anti-Semitism are made, we simply didn't have the same kind of organized, values-driven presence. So Nissan exists to fill that gap. We are not about outrage for its own sake. We are about taking all of the concern, the anxiety about the moment we're living in, the hand-wringing, and turning it into real civic power and real relationships with decision makers. Nissan is nonpartisan, it is pro-democracy, and it's a network for people who want to move beyond social media and actually shape the future of New York. And I would also just add in a nutshell, we're really very focused on helping busy people go from I care, but I'm overwhelmed to I know what's happening. I understand who's aligned with my values, and I have clear, concrete ways to show up. That could mean voting in a low turnout primary. It could mean supporting a candidate who has our back, even when it's hard. It can mean simply being in the room, face to face, building trust with leaders who are making consequential decisions about our community.
So how do you actually accomplish that? It sounds like an unbelievably incredible mission. As a pretty informed voter, I would say, I find that these local elections are uh, things that I probably don't pay as much attention to as I should. Where I'll get to the voting ba the box and I'll see names that I don't recognize. I probably was motivated to go because of one person that I know, and then I get there and there's a whole host of names I don't recognize. So,
Absolutely. We've all had those moments, right? We walk into the ballot box and we look at the ballot and you simply just don't know who to vote for, even if you're very well intended and you have taken the time to show up.
right. So how does Nissan accomplish that?
Okay. So again, we are a membership organization, but it is only $18 to join. And we charge those $18 not for the sake of the $18 necessarily, but because we are a 501(c)(4) membership organization. But once people join us, we are able to tell them who to vote for. We provide a sample ballot. We will email and text our members about priority races and give them opportunities on those races to volunteer, to make donations. Even if they have an hour of time, we can say, this is a priority race where you can phone bank. We can train people on how to do that. We have a lot of fun networking events. In fact, we have one next week on the 9th, Pizza and Politics, where we are going to bring people in and show them how to use an app that can be used from home to text either your own contacts or people in a priority district about the importance of getting out to vote. And we make sure people know when the elections are. For example, the election this year is June 23rd. So we let people know that not only is that election day, but that early voting starts on June 13th and goes through June 21st, that mail-in ballots, are available for without having to explain, your reasoning of why you want it. You don't have to say that you're away. You simply can go online very easily and request one. We give people all of that information about how they can participate. But most importantly, and what differentiates us from other Jewish organizations that are C3s, because we are a C4, once someone joins us, we can make the candidate specific recommendations.
Wow, it seems like for the $18, a person gets a tremendous amount of not only information, but advice and services that go well beyond the $18.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I will say, information alone isn't necessarily going to change an outcome, but your membership will. One person reading an article might feel more informed, but a network of people who are informed, and this is really, what we are trying to build, an army of people who can be informed, organized, and ready to act together. That group can change who gets elected and what they're willing to fight for. And we're very intentional about being a membership organization because democracy rewards organized groups. When you're a member, you're not just a spectator, you're part of a community that shows up in primaries, that backs aligned leaders, that can pick up the phone and have a relationship on the other end. And membership is what helps our community turn that individual frustration into focused collective power. And Trudy, we know for a busy professional or a parent, civic participation cannot mean dropping everything to go live at City Hall or in Albany. It's not realistic. But what it can mean and what we design for at Nissan is a set of small but very high leverage actions over time. So that might look like voting in every primary, even if it's an obscure one, showing up for an occasional briefing where we translate what's at stake into clear, accessible language. For example, for our members, we have membership webinars once a month where we bring in elected officials in key areas who can talk about either their campaigns or policy issues that are at stake. Maybe it's responding to a very targeted action alert or attending a small gathering with an elected official to build a real relationship. So again, none of those things on their own are going to require you to change your life. But when hundreds of people are doing them consistently, the political system starts to treat our community very differently.
So just clarification purposes, this is only New York State races. This has nothing to do with federal races, correct?
Right. We do state assembly and city council, and that is our wheelhouse. It is our scope. There are other organizations that are involved with federal races, but we do not work with candidates who are running for Congress, for the House, or the United States Senate.
Well, it seems like membership is such a great opportunity because we get information thrown at us all day long on the internet, from Twitter, from Instagram. We see all sorts of different news sources on television and in print. And to be able to have it aggregated and organized for us, particularly in a way that would align with what our values are, I would think is so critically important.
So important. And that kind of civic engagement matters particularly right now for Jewish New Yorkers, because as we both know, we are living through a moment where many members of our community, many Jewish New Yorkers are feeling vulnerable and also invisible at the same time. We see anti-Semitism, we see decisions being made about public safety and education that affect us, and often without us really being in the conversation. So for me, civic engagement is how we refuse to be only the subject of headlines or debates, but how we insist on being present as partners in shaping the solutions. It's how we move from asking what is going to happen to us to asking what are we going to do. And Nissan is one way, and it's a very concrete way that we can answer that question. We are building a durable, pragmatic, values-driven presence in New York politics so that when leaders look at the city and the state, they know that there's a thoughtful, organized Jewish community that participates, that builds coalitions, and that's committed to the health of our democracy.
Well, it seems like there was a tremendous need because when you see a race like Mamdani's race, where the other side of the equation is so unbelievably organized, and our side was just not. So it seems to me that Nissan is filling a role that's so critically needed.
Yeah, we know that participation has been very low in these New York elections. And I think, for many years, people sort of felt they had the luxury of not participating. And I often think there's this funny situation in New York where it's so blue in most races that Democrats think they don't have to vote because their vote doesn't matter, and Republicans think they don't have to vote because their vote's not going to matter. And at the end of the day, you have 20% of the people who are eligible to vote voting and making decisions for all of us, which really isn't a very positive way to approach democracy.
That's an incredible statistic that only 20% are voting.
In some
Um,
elections, yes.
and
Yes.
I think until
And that's another thing I will say about many of these races at the city council and state assembly level. They are not won necessarily by thousands of votes. Some of these races are won by hundreds, if not dozens of votes. Our mayor won his first election by, I think, 340 votes. So participation matters. It matters, in terms of showing up to vote, and it matters in terms of mobilizing and helping on the ground with canvassing, which is knocking on doors or phone banking or working on election day. These are small margin races.
So will your members be able to participate in those types of endeavors?
Absolutely. And that is one of the key things that we do. We inform our members about the key places to focus their time and energy, and if they're interested or able, financial resources as well. People need to understand where the priority races are. We provide that information once somebody becomes a member. But we also, for our broader universe, for people who might be interested in Nissan but haven't yet taken the step to become a member, maybe they've joined our mailing list, we do share the information about the basics of participation in New York electoral life because the rules are very complicated. So, for example, the deadline to change party affiliation here is February 14th. Who would think that it would be that early, right, for a June election? And yet, somebody who might want to switch a party affiliation to participate in a primary is going to be out of luck if they go on February 15th. So there are these unusual rules. The fact that the election is the third week of June when many people are out of town is complicated. And so we need to make sure people know if they are going to be away, how they can go either early to vote or vote through a mail-in ballot.
Well, you're giving our not our members, but you're giving our listeners really some very tremendous actionable items. Post 10/7, when we watched the other side be super organized so that these campus encampments happened not organically. They
Hmm.
happened
Hmm.
because it was organized, because
Yeah.
there was notification given to a very passionate membership to show up at this protest, to show up at that protest. And I think it felt a lot, felt for me anyway, and for a lot of my listeners, helpless. We felt helpless. How do you answer that? And I think you're giving us that answer. So
Yes.
that is tremendous, Rachel, and very excited to hear about this. And I think everyone who's listening to this should be going out and becoming a Nissan member, because we can now become engaged in a way that we can be doing what has been done to us, and we could really help the circumstance. Whether or not you can change your voting at this point, so I myself cannot, it's too late. But I can door knock, I can make phone calls.
Absolutely.
There
Yeah.
are other things that I can do to participate in the process, and Nissan will give you that opportunity. So that's great.
Right. I will mention one other rule. I'm just going to, about New York elections that I will just put out there because it is so quirky and many people aren't aware, but I think it's important to know. There are over 1 million independent voters in New York. Those, I'm assuming, are people who registered as independents to give themselves maximum flexibility. They are not allowed to vote in primaries. Most of them do not know that, and they are totally disenfranchised from the decision-making process. So even though that decision was probably well intended, they really end up losing their voice in the process. So there are all kinds of, kind of, I don't know if you call it obscure or just idiosyncratic rules about New York voting that people need to know about. And we do, as Nissan, also put out voter guides that explain all of these things and have all the rules and the key dates inside.
Really incredible.
Yeah.
Um, I think everyone needs to join, and really important. So how would you join Nissan?
So you can do it on our website, which is nysn.org, and right at the top is a join button. We also, when we're at events, have, little palm cards that have a QR code, and we typically bring those with us everywhere we go. But the website is easy.
Well, okay, great to know. So everyone here listening should absolutely join Nissan. So
Yes, we would encourage that. Like the theory of change here is not mysterious. It's really based on, you could say it's based on three pillars: information, relationships, participation. People need accurate, contextualized information about what's happening, not just noise. It can't be just a matter of following social media or going to a rally. No, people need real relationships with elected and civic leaders that are built before a crisis. And then they need a clear, manageable way to participate and in a way that fits their actual lives. And I think like, when you combine those three elements, what you get and what we are really shooting for is a community that's not constantly lurching from panic to panic, that is not reactive, but instead is building long-term civic muscle. That is what we're trying to cultivate, a network that can and will show up consistently over years and not just react episodically when the headlines are terrible.
So we've danced around this a little bit through the first part of our conversation here. So what are the values that Nissan is hoping to foster or continue within our state? And who are the what are the entities that we are opposed to?
Yes. Okay. For us, when I think about it, the anchor is really its values and its civic responsibility. We are absolutely clear about being pro-democracy. And we're also clear that in a complicated, diverse city and state, we are going to work with leaders across the spectrum who share those commitments. I always tell people, I said it at the Jewish Center when I was speaking there on Saturday night, there is room for disagreement. There is not room for disengagement. So our goal here is not to create another echo chamber or to find people who, where everyone thinks exactly like we do, but the goal is to make sure that people who have decision-making power understand our community, are open-minded, that they'll hear from us directly, they'll know we're paying attention, and that these are people who believe in good governance, that they take democracy seriously. And honestly, that's the lane we are choosing. Elected leaders who are not about performance and being performative, but are about being productive in their roles as decision makers for our city and state.
So I think we could be very clear in stating that this is not your typical choosing between one voice of a Democratic candidate and another, where they're both differing with regard to how much to fund some program. But this is a fundamental difference between the democratic city that we know and love, the country that we know and love, and people and candidates and another perspective that wants to hijack that and transform it into something else.
Yeah, listen, my own kids, I'm really blessed to be a mother of four children. They are fifth generation New Yorkers, and it is the lens through which I see almost everything I do. I am a former state legislator myself. I'm an attorney. I ran Fifth Avenue Synagogue as COO for 6 years, but my most important job will always be as their mother. And I look out at the world and I look out at New York City, through that lens as a mother proudly raising four Jewish kids in the city. And I see a city where some of the most fundamental principles we hold dear are being called into question, and many of them, things like the ability to attain an education and have social mobility and practice a religion freely, are the reason our ancestors came to this country. They were fleeing persecution and fleeing restrictions in those areas to come here, where this country has always represented freedom in the most beautiful way. So some of that is in jeopardy right now. I believe that. And it's really important that we take what's happening very, very seriously. But all of that said, we are not trying to stoke panic or turn every election into an apocalypse. But I think people do need to understand there are races where the margin will be small, but the impact on our day-to-day lives will be very real. And our community's participation can actually make a measurable difference. There are candidates in these races who are very different.
So let's get to those races. Tell us about the races that you're watching that you're really concerned about.
Okay, well, we have several races where we're involved, and we have some really wonderful, wonderful candidates running. The first race I'll mention is a race on the Upper West Side, where I think you have had our candidate on the show, Stephanie Ruskay.
Yes, we have, and she is fabulous. Just want to say.
She's fabulous. And she is really someone who talks explicitly about creating bright spots of democracy. She's running on the Upper West Side in Assembly District 69. This is currently Michael Lasher's district, but he is vacating that seat to run for Congress. And Stephanie is somebody who grew up in that area, who knows that community like the back of her hand. She has spent her own career as a rabbi and educator, building coalitions, training leaders, literally holding weekly vigils for democracy in Columbus Circle. So her campaign is an extension of a life spent strengthening democratic culture. She is somebody who is for the buffer zones. She is running on very grounded issues: affordability, public schools, immigrant rights, which are the places where democracy either feels real to many people or doesn't. Another key race where we're very
Talk about her challenger.
Her challenger is Eli Northrup. He ran last time and lost to Michael Lasher.
And is he a DSA supported, endorsed
He's
candidate?
DSA aligned. He was endorsed by the mayor last week.
Okay, so that is one race to definitely watch. Another one you were about to say?
Another key race. There is a great candidate running in District 70. That is Jordan Wright. He is a first-term assembly member. Jordan is a young assembly member from Harlem who talks about building power for young people by actually bringing them into local clubs and institutions, not just mobilizing them online for one-off. He's doing this in a very real way. He comes out of a tradition of Harlem Democrats who know how to govern, and he is very clear that the way you can build influence is by organizing inside the small d democratic process through parties and coalitions, not by blowing it up and not by being disruptive, which I think is some of what we're seeing so frequently on the other side. And when I look at something like that, I see a very pro-democracy posture, especially at a time when so many people, it's become very fashionable to say, or, that people are running sort of on this anti-institution, anti-democracy platform.
Where is Jordan's district?
Jordan's district is it's in Harlem, Upper Manhattan, it's Central Harlem, it's West Harlem, and it's Hamilton Heights.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not at all the Bronx.
No, it's Harlem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another race that you're looking at?
We're supporting Jennifer Rajkumar in Queens. She's been a tremendous friend of the Jewish community. That race is Glendale, Ozone Park, let's see, Richmond Hall, Ridgewood. She is District 38. She's really been a tremendous friend. I met her on a panel I did last year titled Parents Against Anti-Semitism, and I really was so taken with her, how articulate she was, how knowledgeable. She's an attorney, and this has been really a lifelong commitment for her, not something she has come to recently, but a real ally.
And who is her opponent?
Her opponent is David Orkin, and he is a DSA candidate.
And has he ever held office?
I don't think so.
What's polling looking like in that area?
No, I would say all of the races I'm mentioning are tight races, and they need the voters in that area to show up, and they need any Nissan members or people who are interested to go help on the ground. And that means door knocking, which is also sometimes called canvassing, doing phone banks. Some of the phone banking can be done from your own home right now. If you get in touch with the campaign, they will tell you how to do it. You can do it with a cell phone and a computer, and working on election day, both through early voting, June 13th to June 21st, and on the 23rd. These are really very grassroots races. They are very different from congressional races where a lot of the voter contact is through the television ads or now YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or other forms of social media. These races are won on the ground in the district.
So last question to you, and last opportunity for you to tell our listeners, what can we do? For so many of us who are feeling very helpless at this moment in time, what can we do to help ourselves, our community, the Jewish people, Israel, with regard to what's happening?
So, for all of the people listening to the show, if you are someone who cares about the future of New York and about the safety and dignity of Jewish life here, I want to invite you into this project that we're building. Please, for $18, join Nissan, support pro-democracy candidates in these races, and make a plan to show up, not just when there's a crisis, but in these quiet primaries in June that many people don't think about or don't talk about. That is how we are going to move from anxiety to agency. And that is how together we will strengthen democracy in the city that all of us call home and love so dearly.
Well, Rachel, what you're doing is really amazing, and what Nissan is accomplishing is great. Is great. I really hope that everybody who is listening absolutely joins, becomes a member. I know that's what I'm going to do as soon as I get off of this. I'm going to join Nissan because I think the information is so critical. I've recently been at a conference on combating anti-Semitism, and Tony Blair gave the keynote address, and his main thought was the other side against you guys is so organized, and
Mhm.
you guys are just not. So the fact that you are stepping into this and helping to organize this voice is so incredibly helpful and thankful, and just really so happy. I hope, and I know in my heart we are not too late to this party.
No. No, it's a privilege to do this kind of work. And returning to the point on which you started, freedom is worth fighting for. And really, in every generation, it is on us to participate in the process and to raise our voices, to stand up, to speak up, and make sure we have a say in the decisions that are being made.
Well, thank you so much. The upcoming primaries could not be more important. I'm urging everyone to get involved. Absolutely show up to vote. Absolutely find out who those candidates are that
Mhm.
are
Yes.
uh, that are clearly in your corner. Join Nissan. Go to the website NYSAN or NYSN.
NYSN, New York Solidarity Network.org.
Perfect.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks,
So
Trudy. It was a real honor to be with you. You're amazing.
thank you for joining us, Rachel. Thanks
It
for
was the
shedding
greatest
light
pleasure.
on this. That was so important. To our listeners, thank you for joining us. This has been Nothing But the Truth with Trudy Stern. You can join us every Thursday night at 9:30 p.m. on the radio. However, if you missed any part of this show or want to revisit any of our past episodes, you can find Nothing But the Truth wherever you find your podcasts. Until next time, stay strong, stay informed, and keep seeking nothing but the truth.